Welcome back to the craft room. Today I've got brand new molds, brand new epoxy resin, and a brand new tool that I'm super duper excited about, and I think it's going to be a game changer. But I've got to tell you, this week has been a bit of a roller coaster ride with this project. Some of it turned out beautifully, some of it was an utter disaster, but I'm going to keep it real with you. I'm going to show you my fails, my wins, and we'll see what you think in the end. So grab your crafty gear and let's get going. I've got a brand new box of epoxy resin today. I've never used Let's Resin's brand of epoxy, and I love their UV resin, so I'm really excited to give this a try. This is a great kit. It comes with not only your resin, but they give you some mica powders, a scraper, and gloves, some pouring cups, this awesome huge silicone mixing cup, a great silicone mixing stick, and of course directions and instructions on how to use your epoxy resin and how to stay safe while using it. This is a 1-to-1 ratio resin, so there's no brain damage in figuring out how much to mix together. I also got these deep round coaster molds. These are going to be great for what I have in mind for this coaster project today. Because of how deep they are, it's going to allow me to build layers, which is exactly what I need. You want to make sure you're working on a level surface when you're pouring resin. I've got my leveling board, and I've also got this great silicone mat with the lip around it so no spills will go off my table. And because we're coming into the month of love, I've decided to go with some adorable Valentine themed UV DTF stickers. If you know me, you know I love critters, and these are cute. So I think we can come up with some fun ideas with these stickers today. But my overall goal is to make some of these coasters into shaker coasters. I've never done it. I may never do it again, but let's give it a try. I will be using a respirator, gloves, and although the kit does come with gloves, I've got my own that fit me well. And as always, I'll be turning on my Resinaire's air purifier to keep those VOCs down in my craft room. So the first thing I'm going to do is gear up and get to mixing some resin. They do have the measurements on this cup, however, they're hard to read. So I'm going to give a little mark with my Sharpie just so I can see where to pour my part A and part B. And for this first layer, I'm going to be mixing up 12 ounces of resin. So 6 ounces of part A and 6 ounces of part B. And it's always a good idea to keep some alcohol wipes or some alcohol spray and paper towels on hand to clean up your hands, clean up the rim of your bottles when you're working with resin. And as always, I'm going to have all of my supplies listed with links, if they're available, down in the description under the video. And there are discount codes for all of these Let's Resin products. Now that I've got my resin poured, you're just going to mix it up according to the instructions. It's a casting resin. You can pour this 1 inch thick at a time. It's about a medium viscosity. It has an 8 to 24 hour cure time and a great 40 minutes working time before you have to start worrying about it curing. Let's Resin now has a really cool community resource site where they've got beginner tutorials, step-by-steps. I've already gone to it to look up a few things that I didn't know. So be sure to check that out if you've got more questions about any of their products or just resin crafting in general. Now that I've got my resin all mixed up, I'm going to divide it into smaller cups. There's a couple reasons you want to do this. One is because you don't want resin in one big pot together because it can flash cure, which means it'll heat up really quick and cure really quick. So I like to divide big portions of my epoxy into smaller cups, And my second reason is I'm going to put it in my vacuum debubble machine and get rid of some of these bubbles. I'm going to put this resin in for about 10 minutes. And you can see that it's clear and bubble free, and I'm ready to move on. I'm going to do a variety of coasters since I'm experimenting today. So I think I'm going to use some of my Mainspring mica powder. And then I'm going to use some of this cool iridescent glitter flakes for some of them. And then I've got these really pretty pink colored mica flakes. But for my first two coasters, I'm going to leave the base clear because I'm just not sure what's going to look great because I've never done this before. And I'd like to thank my creative crew members for your extra support this week. All of it helps and is totally appreciated. Thank you, thank you. For the second two, I'm going to mix in my Mainspring mica powder. And again, pour just a shallow base because we're going to try to make some of these into shaker coasters. And you'll see how I managed to do that in a minute. For my fifth mold, I'm going to put in some of this specialty glitter by Meyer. I love these iridescent mica flakes. And for my last one, we're going to use that pretty and pink mica glitter. And then I decided on the ones where I used my mica powder, I was going to sprinkle a little bit of my iridescent flakes onto there too. And it's really interesting to watch this because it starts out spread all over, and then you'll see it all comes together in the middle in the end. And then I'm just going to take my lighter and give them a quick going over to pop any of those bubbles that are on top. And I just want to show you that my air purifier is still showing green for go, even after mixing up all my resin. So I'm really impressed by the low VOCs of this resin so far. I've got some leftover resin, so I'm going to fill up some extra molds I have on the side that are heart themed. So this is why I always keep extra molds on standby, because you never know when you're going to have a little too much resin mixed up. I think I'll use some of this mica powder that came in the Let's Resins resin kit that I got today, because it is almost Valentine's after all. And then I mixed in a little of that mica glitter, and I'm pouring that into our other crystally heart mold. I don't even really know what this is supposed to be, but I just had it, and why not? And then with the leftover clear, I'm going to pour that into the second half of my heart place card holder mold. Pop those bubbles, and let's move on. And do yourself a favor. If you work with resin, get this Big Wipes Power Spray. I got this tip off of Steve McDonald's Arts and Crafts YouTube channel. It works great for cleaning your silicone tools and molds and conditioning them. So it really helps bring them back to life. I'm loving this stuff. Isn't it cool how all that glitter kind of came to the middle of the mold with the mica powder? So I'm going to let these cure for most of the day and come back to them and move on to step 2. You probably can't really tell here, but these are not all the way cured. They're not hard as a rock, but they are definitely touchable, yet still a tad pliable. So I'm going to go ahead and do the next step of our journey on this resin shaker coaster adventure that we're about to embark on. The first thing I'm going to do is pick out a few of these stickers and place them onto that first layer of resin. simply place your sticker down. I'm barely giving it a rub. I'm not pushing hard. And then you peel off that top layer. Just be careful when you're peeling off that top layer that you don't dislodge the resin from your mold, because you don't want the next layer to go underneath of it. And before I do all 6 of these, I think I'm just going to experiment with the first 2, so that if I ruin these, I don't ruin all 6. And I know not to do this on the next ones, right? I don't have a shaker coaster mold set, so I decided I'm going to make my own, or I'm going to try to make my own. So I'm placing these smaller coaster molds that I have had on hand for years into the center of my big, deep Let's Resin silicone molds, right on top of that first layer of resin and right over the top of the stickers. And then I'm heating it up a little bit with my embossing gun just to try to make sure that it does stick and seal to that first layer of resin, because I'm hoping once I pour my resin around it, it won't leak underneath, because that'll kind of ruin the whole thing. And then I'm going to give it a good push with my thumb. I'm just hoping and praying at this point that this is going to work. I've mixed up another 4 ounces of epoxy resin, and I'm going to pour it into the smaller cups that came with my kit so that I can get it around the rim of my molds. I did degas this resin as well to try to get rid of as many bubbles as I could before pouring it in. So far, so good. It looks like the resin's holding and not sinking down, which means it's leaking under. So cross your fingers. Let's see what happens. And now with my extra resin, I'm going to go ahead and put another top layer on these molds with the glitter, because the glitter is a little chunky and I want to be able to stick my stickers to it without that being a problem. And now I'm just going to let those cure overnight and say a little prayer, and let's see what we have in the morning. So good news, it looks like the resin all stayed put. Let's pull out our center pieces and see what we've got. And it's perfect. Exactly what I wanted. I wanted to create a hollow center. I'm going to go ahead and take these all the way out of the mold because they don't need to be in there for the rest of this project. It's really nice and cured. You can see that I've got a bit of a rough edge and my top edge is not flush, but I'm not worried about that because of my handy dandy new tool that I've got that we're going to be using soon. And I think it's going to save the day. But aren't these so cute already? And we haven't even done anything else to them. Let's go ahead and demold our last minute heart placemaker. It's kind of cool looking where the clear resin intermingled with the mica powder resin. These would be great for like party place card holders, name holders. And for this other heart, I think I'm going to leave it for now because I might put a back coating of resin on it. Now that we know that that worked, I'm going to move on to the rest of our coasters and go ahead and place some stickers down on them. Just like we did before. To be honest, those creamy colored ones I thought were going to be ugly, but in the end they actually turned out to be my favorite, so stay tuned. These little critters just make me happy. Does anyone else out there love these little whimsical animals? I think I'll change that owl out for a little mouse. Fill in the mouse vibe today. Add a few extra hearts because I accidentally tore his ear off, but no big deal, we'll cover that up in more stickers. You can combine as many stickers as you want onto these. And again, I'm just going to place my round coaster molds that I've had in the middle to create that hollow center. And I think we need a dog and cat on this one. And we'll put our owl over here. And I'm just going to repeat the process now that we know it worked and it held. And on the dog and cat one, I poured that so thick that I'm not going to have room to make it into a shaker. So I think I'll just top it off and make it one solid coaster. I've got little stubborn bubbles coming up on this one, so I'm just going to do my best to get those out with a pin and a lighter. I never stress too much over bubbles, folks. I know a lot of people are really into like, you got to get rid of the bubbles, but you know, it's character. It doesn't really bother me so much. And these are not to sell. These are just for me to experiment, to share with you, and to have fun. And they turned out perfect. And I'm really starting to love my cream colored ones a whole lot more. They look really cute as a backdrop for those stickers. I mean, you could totally just pour a clear layer of resin down over the sticker and call it a day. You could stop right here and have an adorable coaster. But no, I have to challenge myself more because I want to try to make a shaker coaster. Ay, ay, ay. What did I get myself into? And actually the dog and kitty one, just as a solid coaster, is super cute too. Although it's kind of slick, so I'm guessing this might be more like a paperweight. But this one turned out flawless. I still have to do a top coat on it, but so far so good. Let's clean up our edges so that I can move on to the next step of trying to make shakers out of them. I've received this 4-in-1 electric resin sanding and polishing machine by Let's Resin. I really think it's going to be a game changer. Of course, Let's Resin always provides great, thorough instructions on how to use it, all of the part sets inside. It's always packaged amazing. So here's your main power tool right here. It can either be handheld or placed in the base. It comes with 2 different bottom pieces, a smaller one for smaller sanding and a larger one. A huge variety of sanding papers and different grit sizes. And here's our base where you can cradle the sander in, and I'll show you that in a minute. And then you've got a plug-in power adapter. And you also have a USB to C charging cable. And they also have a grinding wheel and a buffing wheel for polishing. All right, let's assemble this and try to do some sanding on our coasters and see what it's like. I think I'll use the bigger sanding wheel for my coasters to try first. It just snaps right on. And then I'm going to put on my buffer pad. This is to give it a little more cushion when you're sanding, and also if you've got rounded edges, it'll help kind of move around the rounded edges. Let's Resin has a whole YouTube video on just this machine and everything about it, which I'll link down in the description of the video also if you guys want to check that out. I'm just going to show you some of my experience using it. It won't be everything it does, but you'll get the idea. Of course, please remember that when you are sanding epoxy resin, all that dust is also not good for you. So wear a mask, wear eye protection, and wear gloves even when you're sanding. And get a spray bottle with some water in it because you want to keep your sandpaper or your project moist. And that will help it from overheating, and it will keep that dust from flying all over too. It's definitely a powerful little machine. Let's test it out doing it handheld now. And I'm going to switch to the smaller disc. It takes a little getting used to figure out your rhythm, but holy cow, this thing works good. This is going to be a game changer for me going forward. And I'm going to have to do some polishing in a future video to show you how that works, but we're not going to be doing that today, because this video is getting way too long. So I'm going to clean this up and we're going to come back and start figuring out how to create our shaker part of these coasters. I've acquired all of these little fun tidbits that are Valentine's-y that we can put inside of them. But first I need to put a clear coat down over my stickers so that those don't come up when the water hits them. And it's the same process as before. I just mix up my resin, put it in my degasser so that it's nice and clear, spread it around to cover the bottom, and this time I'm going to put them in my curing machine so that I can get them cured quicker. And I'm going to go ahead and do a flood coat on the top of my solid coaster with my doggy and kitty and let that cure overnight. In the meantime, I'm going to cut out some sort of like acetate film. So I grabbed what is basically a thinner acetate film from a paper kit that I had. I don't know if it's going to work, but I thought, let's just give it a try before we spend more money, right? I'm trying to cut the circles a bit smaller than the rim of my coaster, and you'll see why in a moment. Now that my coasters are cured, we're going to try out this experiment. And I'm having a thought and a moment where I'm deciding that my cream-colored fox and mouse coaster, I think I'm going to leave as is. In this case, less is more. So we're going to set those ones aside. Aren't these mini Valentine's candy hearts adorable? I mean, I just can't with these miniatures. I'm going to go ahead and start sprinkling a bunch of these into our coasters. I don't know how much to put in or not put in, but I'm going a little crazy because it's all so cute. Now I'm going to mix distilled water and glycerin to create my liquid that it's going to make everything float around inside. Directions usually say half and half for like a snow globe, but I did a little more glycerin in mine. When you first start stirring, it's going to be cloudy, but don't worry, it clears up really quick. I had a thought, what if I just put part of the liquid in before I put the top on so that it's not so hard to squeeze it in through a hole later on? And then I took some UV resin around the rim and placed my plastic sheet on top of that, hoping it'll stick. I was sure not to get any of the liquid onto the rim, and I left a little bit of the epoxy edge exposed so that I can top coat the whole thing with epoxy and it would adhere. But I'm trying to use the UV resin as glue to hold the top on first. So it seems like so far so good. It's holding, the water staying put. So I decide, let's just drill a little hole through the plastic and finish filling it. I just want to show you what not to do. When I was squeezing it in, it popped the seal. Number one, because I didn't have an escape hole for the pressure, and number two, because I didn't put a layer of epoxy over it before I finished it off. I was just hoping that thin layer of UV was going to keep the seal, but it was way too much pressure. Don't do like I did and get impatient. Go through the whole process of topping it, putting an epoxy layer over it before you fill it. And I am not going to fill it through the top in the next step. Let me tell you, I was in a mood at this point. I was highly frustrated, and it was my own fault because I was trying to do it what I thought would be an easy way, and it did not turn out that way. Does anyone else go through these learning lessons working with resin? So on my next one, I'm going to go ahead and seal it with UV resin. I am not going to put any liquid in it at this point. And then later we're going to top coat this with epoxy before we even start thinking about filling it up with water. On my third one, because I'm so frustrated and I don't know if my shaker coasters are going to work, I'm going to just fill this mold up with epoxy resin and make it a solid coaster, but keep those little cute Valentine's tidbits in there to make it extra special. And now I'm going to top coat that fox that has the plastic sheet and the UV resin with a flood coat of epoxy. I'm going to cure these in my machine, and I'm also going to pour just a really thin clear coat in my coaster molds because I think that might make a better top for our other shaker. And here's what we've got the next day. First, let me show you our dog and kitty. That was just a solid coaster that I flood coated. It turned out flawless. You can see the layers in there. Isn't it cute? Other one that I decided just to fill with epoxy and the little Valentine's goodies. You can see that I need to do some more sanding and put another coat on it, but it turned out really cute actually. And I like that you can see the different layers in there. It still looks like the hearts and the stars and the glitters are floating in there. You can see, because I was not careful and I was getting tired and frustrated, that my resin leaked all over the sides of my shaker one. Once we clean it up, it'll be actually okay because I'll know the whole thing is totally sealed and can hold water. And I also had some leftover resin again, and I've made another one of these name card holders with some of those fun little Valentine's goodies. I didn't have this one in the curing machine, and it's been really cold in my studio. It's been 23 at night here in Florida, folks. It meant that my resin did not finish curing, but I think it actually worked to my benefit because it was a little bit flexible and I could kind of press it on to the top of my owl shaker coaster. So I'm going to fill him up with some goodies. I'm just going to go all out and put a whole bunch in there because at this point, what the heck? And now I'm going to place that clear piece that I poured last night on top of him with a little bit of glue this time, some E6000 instead of UV resin. And with these two cuties, I'm just going to leave them as a standalone coaster with the rim because I really like that. And I was going to put a clear coat on the rim so that it was glossy, but I actually really like that frosty look after I sanded it. So I think I'm going to leave them. You could also take a chrome marker and marker the edge, but I really like them. And now that the glue has dried on our owl and the epoxy is cured on our fox, I'm going to take a Dremel tool and drill holes down through the top into the thick resin part. And I'm also going to drill a second hole so that the air can escape and not too much pressure builds up. And again, fill them with my water glycerin mixture. And it's working. Now my coaster needs a lot of sanding and finishing, but it's working. While these were curing last night, out of my frustration, I got onto YouTube and I found Louise Singleton Creations YouTube channel where she made some shaker coasters. I'll link her below. And she kind of ended up having the same problems, and I learned that I need to drill them through the thick epoxy and create an escape hole. Thank you so much for that video, Louise. It was uber helpful. And then also following her guidance, I just took some hot glue to fill my holes and kind of pressed it down once they were filled. And I let that dry. And then on the second one, I did the exact same thing. And they worked. Once they were done and they were shaking around in the fluid and everything was floating, I had this really deep satisfaction come over me. So I'm glad I followed through and finished the product. Yes, they need cleaned up, and I would sand these down and give them a nice clear coat over the top of them. But we ended up with two really cute shakers. I love my Vanilla Fox creamy coasters and a couple of solid resin coasters. So you ended up with like 3 techniques out of this video accidentally. And I hope that you learned something along the way and you understand that we all get frustrated, we all have our moments, and it's just totally normal when you're crafting. But at the very least, I hope that I have inspired you to try to get crafty too, even when you're trying to make shaker coasters. Have a great week, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.